Hey guys, well, it's time for another Out of Breath Arm Sore Packer Minute, the show where I walk around the neighborhood talking about the Packers, and you watch to see if I get Captain Jack Sparrowed by a saber. And I gotta tell you, it's a beautiful day today. I hope you're enjoying your summer. I know we're in the middle of the summer doldrums, but guess what? Training camp is less than a month away, and I'm out here walking around. I'm just gonna give you a little panoramic. This is beautiful Northeast Tennessee. I'd love it if it was God's country of Wisconsin, but I got a beautiful view, taking a walk, talking about the Packers. And the conversation today is about how fast can Kevin King develop into what most of us think Kevin King will eventually be for the Green Bay Packers. And obviously, I think most in Packer Nation would say the sooner the better. Many think this kid could be a Pro Bowler with his physical skills and his skill set that he has, his size, 6'3", his speed, 4.4 speed. This is kind of just the ticket and exactly the remedy for the ills that the Packers experienced in the defensive backfield last year. However, the question is, how quickly can we, number one, get him on the field, number two, get him completely saturated with the Packers, with Dom Capers' defense, which has a tendency from time to time to befuddle young defensive backs, I think. I've been looking at Demarius Randall and Quentin Rollins and seeing some of evidence of that in that situation. And the Packers are going to need these guys to get out on the field, Rollins and Randall. However, if this Kevin King kid develops, we now brought in-house, could be the difference between the Packers being middle of the pack defensively and possibly being upper middle, maybe a top 10 defense. Remember, coverage helps the pressure and pressure helps the coverage. So I think as long as Matthews and Perry are healthy, the pressure will be there, although I do have, and I'll do it in another show, a few question marks about where the pressure is going to come from. We'll talk about that probably tomorrow. But Kevin King, he's got some advantages. Number one, he's walking on the field as the fastest cornerback. Now with Sam Shields gone, he's the tallest cornerback we've seen in a long time. So the coaching staff obviously is going to be hard after getting this kid on the field. With Devon, and another advantage I think that he has is with Devon House in the house. It's just hard to even say it that way, but I think the Packers can afford to be a little more patient with him. He can learn from House's leadership, but he isn't going to necessarily have to go out and take the number one role. I think that's House's role at this point, and House, according to Joe Witt, has had the best training camp as well. But I think he can go out on the field. He is custom made to be a perimeter guy, and there's just no doubt about that. And that guy looks like he's having fun cruising around the campus, the ETSU campus today. King is custom made to be a perimeter guy, but if he can get out on number twos rather than number ones, I mean, just think last year, we had to put Ladarius Gunter on number ones. And if he could have even moved to number twos, I think he would have benefited from that. But we just didn't have Randall and Rollins were consistently moving in and out of the lineup with injuries. We weren't able to do that, and we saw how difficult that was for Ladarius Gunter. Well, King's a young player too, and cornerback position is one it's very easy to get turned around, especially against number one wide receivers. But if they can take a number two, maybe a little bit smaller, probably not the tallest guy, probably not the fastest guy, and yet can give him a run for his money, can teach him a good deal about how not to get beat. I think that's the best path for Kevin King developing into a number one, which is eventually what we want. And the sooner the better, to be quite honest. I've said in the past, I think the development of Kevin King could be the critical component to the Packers' defensive success by the end of the season. If we can't get him in or he stumbles, I think our entire defense could struggle once again. I don't think House is necessarily a number one. I think he's going to be that de facto starting the season. But he's not a fast guy. He's a bigger guy. He's a bump and run guy. He's a press man guy, which we kind of need. And which Kevin King is not so much as of right now. And we'll see how he develops in that area as well. But if the Packers can get Devon House out, the perimeter one, Kevin King, if he can come on the field, maybe, if not week 1, maybe week 2 against Atlanta, against Sanu or Gabriel. However they, the Atlanta Falcons are a tough go because they can line up Freeman and Coleman split out on the perimeter, and those guys are like wide receivers, and that's going to be difficult. It's also difficult to think that Kevin King is going to be ready for, say, a Julio Jones and number 1 in week 2. So I prefer the idea of Devon House in that spot. But I do think King has some advantages. He's got the physicals. Disadvantage-wise, the number 1 thing, he has had a little bit of a knock on him in terms of tracking the ball. But the main thing to me is that Kevin King was unavailable for OTAs. And I think that puts him behind a little bit. He was seen working out with Joe Witt sort of on a one-on-one basis. And that's going to definitely help him out without a doubt. But this is the perimeter cornerback position in the NFL. It's a very coveted position. It's coveted. The players that can play that position are coveted. But it's extremely difficult, and it generally takes a second year to develop. And we saw even what our second-year players in Randall and Rollins were unable to do, I guess is the best way to say it. They weren't able to hang with the big boys. And we ended up with Gunter, who was really the only stable cornerback, who was a number 4, taking our perimeter number 1. And that's just a recipe for disaster in the NFL. So with Kevin King can develop, he's got some things going against him in terms of just not having been available for some of the activities that are going to help him, the orientation, things like this. But he's got all the physicals, and I think if he develops sooner rather than later into a guy that can be relied upon. And another thing I'm going to throw in terms of Kevin King's development is if Kevin King develops into a man press corner, his responsibilities and the amount that he has to think about goes down a little bit. If you're playing a zone, or if you're you saw Randall and Rollins trying to communicate between each other where the safety is supposed to go, who's supposed to take the flat receiver, who's supposed to take the go, and this kind of confusion can cause problems, and we did have that problem last season. If Kevin King goes out there and his only job is to man up on the number 2, or better yet, in my mind, nice Harley there, pretty bike, I don't know if you can see it, Bagger, Burgundy. If Kevin King, his only job is to take one side of the field and man up, if he can come up and press, I think that simplifies things for a first-year player, and I think that might help him a great deal and help him develop into somebody that we can count on earlier rather than later, which I think is going to be super important. So I guess what it comes down to, I'm becoming more and more convinced, and I know Josh Jones, I'm going to be talking plenty about Josh Jones. I think he's going to be a big factor as well. But I think the expectation is that he's going to be used in multiple ways. The thing with Kevin King is if he can't do that one thing, then we are really going to be kind of behind the 8 ball. If he develops, on the other hand, we will... I think if he develops early rather than later, sorry, I walked right in front of him. I was trying to go behind him. He was making a left. I thought he was going straight. So I just made a loop for no reason. But if he can develop earlier rather than later, Josh Jones, I think, is going to be a really valuable, versatile asset to our defense. And things could get really good really fast. All right, well, I'll let you go for today. Guys, we'll be talking again soon. This is the Out of Breath Arm Sore Packer Minute. Go ahead and take a walk today. It's beautiful. Enjoy your summer. Go Pack.